Excuse me. Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner, classic, non-classics. Excuse me. This episode number 3365, Doubleshot number 3269. We got two trades published by Skybound Entertainment. First to being G.I. Joe by Josh Williamson. Not American Hero, mind you. Oh no, this is just basically the Josh Williamson under the Energon Universe banner. This collects the first, I believe it's the first 6 issues of this run. Yep, it's a brand new book for G.I. Joe. First new number 1 in a few years. I think the last new number 1 they published was actually part of allegedly the jewel of the Hasbro initiative over at IDW, but it got quickly canceled after a handful of issues. I think due to the fact the writer of the book put his foot in his mouth and it was relaunched as Scarlet Strike Force, and it seemed like when Chuck Dixon and Mike Costa wrote the title, they had a pretty good idea what they were doing, and then it seems like once they stopped writing the title, G.I. Joe and Cobra, it seems like that the only title they had pretty good direction with it was probably Real American Hero, but not in the case of the IDW Universe version of G.I. Joe. For one thing, it felt very disconnected. It only lasted for a little over 2 years, kept getting relaunched. It was being successful, but now we have over it, well, now this book in particular launched basically, it follows up with the series Duke, a little bit with Destro, and a little bit with Cobra Commander. It does not mention Scarlet per se in this book. Yeah, Scarlet's not here, neither is Snake Eyes. So, we have flashbacks to kind of formation of the Joes, which, by the way, this lab includes the Baroness, which she doesn't count Destro in here, except that she and Destro are not an item in this universe. Destro is dating somebody else, and Baroness may have a thing for Duke. But the thing is, this is more in line with a little bit of the live-action interpretation of the Baroness, where she was the ex-fiancée of Duke. So you have the character Rock and Roll just having fun, just blasting up Cobra drones. There's also members like Stalker, Cover Girl, Clutch, and the Baroness, where her jetpack basically fails, Blackout Basic Duke saves her, and of course, he's going to practically beg for her to be on the team because basically her skills, she should be part of Joe, not basically part of a jail cell. Then we got the Springfield, USA. Those of you a little curious about Springfield, what is the purpose of Springfield in the continuity of G.I. Joe? Springfield, in the original continuity, was the birthplace of the Cobra organization. Because prior to Cobra Commander take over the town was in economic ruin. Apparently, it was implied that the country itself abandoned the city and became a stronghold for, well, Cobra. At one point, it was destroyed, and the citizens had to go someplace else and this place here was one of the few major locations to serve as one of the primary bases for the Cobra organization. And we have here Destro. We have also Cobra Commander, where he lost his hand, probably in his miniseries, and he puts on his helmet, and he dresses like this. Now, in this universe, like in the case of the anime continuity, he was a citizen Cobra Law who wore a mask because of the chemicals he was part of. Here it's they kind of loosely based that version for this character here. And there's stuff here with almost like a Nick Fury-esque thing where you have this secret agent beating up somebody here, and then he's called back home, and then we go to the pit, which is basically supposed to be the primary. The pit in most continuities tend to be the primary base of G.I. Joe. That, or it's some bunker area out someplace like one. I think it was also there's also based Antarctica. Like they have bases and mostly put GI Joe in a lot of continuities for it tends to be an American-based organization. Yes, the movie version basically had it more international. You see Colonel Hawk, and basically we have a meeting where they basically detail the events of Transformers because they take place in this continuity, and because there's a big crossover, so they're going to a particular island that's controlled by Mars Industries, which is a company owned by Destro, which so they have to watch this thing, and then of course Cobra attacks. And then we have Bat Troopers come in, and of course one of the Joes, Rock and Roll, gets killed during the course of all this. And then it turns out this particular one is actually not a bat. It's a bat's usually a robot. This guy is someone who's, and then we have this female Cobra soldier who's shooting wounded. Yeah, and also, because of the fact that Baroness is not part of Cobra, she's willing to attack Cobra. So, guy gets away, of course, but Rock and Roll is dead. And Stalker and Cover Girl are injured. And of course, mentioned organization called Cobra. Must be new. We have nothing to them. The one who gave them the orders, I know him. He's judged with his security. And of course, he wants to basically bomb the Mars Industries, but can't exactly do that because Deathstroke can't storm a foreign diplomat's home. Yeah, apparently he is diplomat. Give the Colonel need to heal. If you sit here and do nothing, doesn't like someone take a hit. And then of course, basically, do we have this guy in the suit shows up. It's like, who is this? This is Risk. The one is basically like the James Bond. Like, I've heard of you. Bored, rich boy looking for trouble. Yeah, Risk, join it. And then of course, basically, it's like, so heavy duty was on half a soldier. His name was Rock and Roll. And of course, these two start fighting. And it's like, yep. Yeah, and then of course, basically and then we show that, oh, we have Megatron here. Yep. And there's also about the brainwave scanner. Yeah, that is something from the original continuity that's never been brought up in other stuff. Yeah, the brainwave scanner is something that was created by Dr. Mindbenders' predecessor, who died early on in the series. And so they have Clutch go undercover, a reluctant undercover, work as a Viper. And they have a guy who's a scientist who apparently decides to do a knife a Cobra Commander and say, Cobra! Yeah, apparently it's part of Cobra law. And he proceeds to dispose of him and throws him in a pit of snakes. I wonder if that's Cobra Commander basically. I wonder if this is Joshua Williamson just tossing away the whole Cobra law stuff. Because I'm sure he probably was his idea, but my guess is he must have been reluctant. Either he must have changed his mind. So it's like, yeah, I want nothing to do with him at all. And then we have just Risk and Duke just beat the crap out of each other for quite a while. And apparently Hawk has no problem with this at all. I'll do a team building. Lots of punching. At one point, basically, you have... Get this. You have Risk putting Duke in a standing armbar. And it lasts for quite a while. Even at one point, I think electric knuckles. And then a knife is thrown because Stalker tells him to stop fighting. And of course, basically, he's like, yeah, you got Bisco's family, and mentioned the whole thing about Cobra, a new player. And apparently, Cover Girl got her, basically during a previous mission, she got her arms burned, but now she's got bandages on. And then Risk, basically, it's not Risk, it's actually somebody else who's going like undercover. Actually, this is Dr. Money. Yes, so apparently, like, Cobra is after them for reasons. But looking up, basically, they're saved by G.I. Joe. Because, of course, basically, Cobra wants them for reasons. And then we have Tomex and Zamat, the Crimson Twins. Surprised they're not called the Crimson Guard. Because, by the way, in this continuity, they made a debut in not the Cobra Commanders miniseries. No, they made a debut in Destro. Yep. And they're bringing the Crimson Twins. And during the course of this little mission, Risk earns the respect of the rest of the team, which I thought was really cool. So we have this female person part of Cobra who apparently is close to Destro. And of course, basically, create a new order because basically it's Cobra Commander, of course. He wants to take over the world. And then we see, looks like Duke, the Baroness, Risk, and Cover Girl. And it's like, yeah, basically it's like a fight pit. And Destro's like, is this your team? Yeah, and it seems like these two don't know each other very well. So apparently the girl's name is Chameleon. Yeah, this confirms that Destro and the Baroness are not in this continuity. This is by far the first continuity where it starts off where these two are not an item. So of course Clutch basically frees the Joes due to his reluctant undercover mission. And it's a big brawl. And by the end of this, Risk earns the respect of the team. And then Dr. Money is on the brainwave scanner. And then we have our interesting meeting. Duke meeting Cobra Commander. Two characters who have their own self-titled miniseries. I believe both written by Joshua Williamson. And he's like, who the hell are you? My name is Cobra Commander. You man in charge? What'd you like money? Don't worry about him. You should worry about me. Don't move a muscle. I'm glad I got me face to face, Duke. How do you know my name? Destro told me about you. I must say, you and I are very alike. We're both loathed to something greater than ourselves, willing to get anything to cause, only betray cast aside, forced to find answers and a new role in the universe. Yet when you crawl back to your masters, I create something new. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Nothing like. Perhaps you're right. And throws a switch. Yeah. And then we see him blow up part of his arm. Interesting. And no one attacks Lord Destro. Yeah. So, yeah, and Duke is shot while fighting Cobra Commander. And an excellent fight takes up several pages. Lucky they don't listen to me. Indeed. I look forward to our battles together. All of Art History Decommission. So they of course look at the device and they show the fact, yeah, they have the captive Megatron in their custody, which of course he gets freed in the most recent issues. And yeah, Risk basically earns Stalker's respect, and Clutch basically is back. He has no uniform. The Cobra was itchy. And he goes off his Jeep, and then he has like a ball, like something in his bag. Then he has to jump out because the Jeep transforms into a Transformer. Yep, and that's the first trade for Judge Slim's run for G.I. Joe. Excellent. It was amazing. Very action-packed. I could book a 10 out of 10. Next up we have is Invincible Volume 22. Reboot? Yep. Reboot. Yeah, there's a reason why it's called this. This collects issues 121 to 126. Written by Ryan Otley. So we have a robot just attacking people, and just a recap of basically that Mr. Immortal's in their custody along with various other heroes. And then of course he explodes. And of course he goes, oh my face. And everybody basically is like, legs? Help us? Yep. And it's, well, the woman's son who calls her father because she can change her gender. And of course they basically attempt to escape. Yep. Yep, so if Mr. Immortal basically is back in control, and basically they kind of go into hiding for a bit, and then once somehow a robot finds them. And some basically join his side, but leave the rest, no problem. Alan basically just has a talk with people who are part of the Alien Alliance. Mark and Eve with their child basically fight against other aliens. And of course, he and his brother still get along perfectly fine, but Mark does not get along with Oliver's girlfriend. So they wear these uniforms, fight this creature here. And of course, also these issues, Drag is still reconstituting himself, kind of. And of course, basically where Eve and Mark basically put their daughter down, and then they proceed to apparently have sex. Yep, because they're husband and wife, because why not? And then we have ships leaving the planet, and go down to this deserted planet, and go in this tunnel, with this weird light tentacle thing, and Mark touches it, and then it puts him back in time to the events of the very first issue, where he's reading a comic book, where he's supposed to be getting ready for school. And then throughout the next issue, he basically, it's like, yeah, where he basically knows Eve, and the fact that basically they're a couple, but they're in the past, but she's with Rex at this point. But yeah, mixed up with a robot per se, and somehow Mark has his powers, and then after beating up some bad guys, fights more bad guys with the Teen Guardians, and then of course Mark becomes a superhero. Then basically Mark has his daddy loves him, and then basically he knows the fact that he's going to take over the planet, and then he proceeds to fight him. Yep. He fights his father, basically to repeat of issue 12 once again. And he didn't exactly want this. And then we see that the Global Guardians, the original ones for On-Man killed him, they're all still alive with the exception of Mortal Man. It's like, yeah, he's been lying the whole time. And then, of course, he punches Mortal Man, but doesn't kill him per se, because he's a Mortal Man. And then, of course, they beat him, take him to custody. You think, oh, that was it. Wow. Save a lot of lives, then I was saying a thank you for stopping him, and then he talks to Alan briefly. And then Iron-Man is freed, well, released anyways, and goes out to space. Well, be forced into space, mind you. And then, of course, him and Eve get closer, and of course Rex like, that's my girl. Nope. Want to talk? Just tired. And then he gets a light again. And then, of course, he's offered, you want to keep this timeline? He says, nope. And the reason because of his daughter. And then he comes back, apparently, and he goes back to where Eve is. Of course, she's very happy. She's like, shocked, like, where have you been? And then the book ends with basically his daughter, who's now 5 years old, asking, are you my daddy? And that's the issue itself. all in all, really, really good. I enjoyed this. Yep. And, okay, so the reason why that Kirkman did this, the whole reboot thing, it's to basically poke fun of the constant reboots and relaunches that Marvel and DC have done for the past, 15 years. Well, at this point, anyways, for the next decade. And that's the primary reason why that I've heard the reason why he did it. But of course, basically, we're 26, which means we have 18 issues left to go, and then we're done with the series. Yep, we officially done and move on to something else. As for G.I. Joe itself, well, as far as I can tell, unless somehow they release another trade on the app, I'm pretty much up to date with both books. I'll figure out something to review to replace it. What will be? You'll find out and see. Okay? So yeah, that's picking up the review. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up we have is the newest episode of, well, something that got released yesterday. Okay, thanks, bye.